Chapter 1: The House on Maple Street. Emily Parker, a college sophomore, had never been to the house on Maple Street before. As she pulled her car into the driveway, the sprawling, modern house loomed ominously under the twilight sky. She brushed off a shiver, reminding herself it was just another babysitting gig, a way to earn some extra cash. The house, equipped with the latest smart home technology, was a stark contrast to the cozy, cluttered apartment Emily called home. She rang the doorbell, its chime echoing strangely, as if the house itself was waking up. The door swung open, revealing Mrs. Collins, a tall, elegant woman with a warm smile. "Emily, so glad you could make it. Let me show you around." Her voice was pleasant, but Emily sensed an undercurrent of haste in her tone. As Mrs. Collins led her through the house, Emily marveled at the high-tech features. Voice-activated lights, automated blinds, a state-of-the-art security system, it was all very impressive, yet slightly unnerving. In the living room, two children, a boy and a girl, were engrossed in a video game. "That's Max and Lily," Mrs. Collins pointed out. "They're usually no trouble. Just make sure they're in bed by 9. Emily nodded, her eyes wandering to the various screens and gadgets adorning the room. She felt a creeping sense of being watched, but shook off the feeling as nerves. Once Mrs. Collins had left, Emily tried to engage the children, but they were more interested in their game. Resigned, she settled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The house creaked and groaned, settling in for the night, the sounds unfamiliar and jarring to Emily. She tried to focus on her phone, but the atmosphere of the house was distracting. Then, her phone buzzed. A text message, but not from any number she recognized. "Don't let them go to bed late," it read. Emily frowned, looking around. "Max, Lily, did one of you send this?" she called out. The children didn't respond, too absorbed in their game. Emily's heart raced a little. She texted back, "Who is this?" No reply came. She tried to rationalize it, maybe a wrong number, a prank. But as the night grew darker, and the house's automated systems activated, shadows dancing across the walls, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. She checked the doors, finding them locked as Mrs. Collins had shown her, the security panel glowing an eerie green. "All secure," it displayed in digital letters. Trying to calm her nerves, Emily decided to get the kids ready for bed. But as she turned off the television and ushered Max and Lily upstairs, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message sent a chill down her spine. "They shouldn't have ignored me." Frozen, Emily stared at the message. The house felt alive around her, watching, waiting. And as the smart lights dimly illuminated their path to the bedrooms, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone in the house on Maple Street. Chapter 2: Whispers in the Dark. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she read the message over and over. Her mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. She looked at Max and Lily, who seemed blissfully unaware of the growing tension. "Come on, kids, time for bed," Emily said, her voice slightly trembling. The children complained but obeyed, climbing the stairs to their respective rooms. Emily's eyes darted around, half expecting to see someone, or something, lurking in the shadows. Once the children were in their rooms, Emily did a quick check of the house, peering out the windows into the darkness. Nothing seemed amiss, yet the sensation of being watched persisted. She locked the children's doors from the outside, a precaution she felt was necessary given the strange events. Back downstairs, Emily tried to gather her thoughts. She decided to call Mrs. Collins, but as she dialed, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into darkness. "Not now," she muttered, fumbling for her phone's flashlight. The house creaked ominously, and Emily's breath caught in her throat. She shone the light around, the beam cutting through the darkness. The phone rang, but instead of Mrs. Collins' voice, a distorted, static-filled whisper came through. "You shouldn't be here," it hissed before the line went dead. Emily's hands shook. She wanted to leave, but she couldn't abandon the children. Taking a deep breath, she decided to check the fuse box, hoping it was just a blown fuse. As she made her way to the basement, the smart home system flickered back to life, the screens casting an eerie glow. The house seemed to breathe around her, the walls whispering secrets she couldn't understand. Reaching the basement, Emily found the fuse box and flipped the switches. The lights flickered on momentarily, then off again. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that this wasn't a simple power outage. She heard a soft giggle behind her and spun around, her flashlight beam dancing wildly. But there was nothing there, just the empty, echoing basement. Heart racing, Emily hurried back upstairs. The house felt different now, hostile, as if it wanted her out. The smart home system seemed to be toying with her, lights turning on and off, screens flickering with indecipherable symbols. Then, a loud bang came from upstairs. Emily froze, then raced up, fearing for the children. She found their doors still locked, but the banging continued, coming from inside the rooms. "Max! Lily!" Emily shouted, unlocking the doors. She burst into Max's room first. The window was wide open, curtains billowing in the wind, but Max was nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through her as she ran to Lily's room. It was the same scene, open window, empty bed, no sign of Lily. Emily felt a scream rise in her throat. The house seemed to be laughing at her, the smart system now blaring a cacophony of disjointed sounds. Alone and terrified, Emily realized she was in a living nightmare, one that the house on Maple Street had crafted just for her. Chapter 3: The House's Game. Emily's mind raced with terror. The children were gone, and the house seemed to pulsate with a malevolent energy. She grabbed her phone to call the police, but the screen flickered and died, leaving her in the dark, oppressive silence of the house. Taking a deep breath to steady her nerves, Emily decided to search the house. She needed to find Max and Lily. The idea that the house itself was against her seemed insane, but every creak and groan of the structure felt intentional, as if it was alive. Armed only with a heavy flashlight, Emily moved cautiously through the dark corridors. The shadows seemed to twist and turn, creating menacing shapes that danced just out of the light's reach. The smart home system was eerily quiet now, as if it were holding its breath, watching her. She checked every room, closet, and corner, but there was no sign of the children. The house was a labyrinth of shadows and fear, each room leading to another, each more unsettling than the last. In the living room, the TV suddenly flickered to life, displaying static that morphed into a blurry image of the basement. Emily's heart skipped a beat. Was this a clue? Or another trick? With no other leads, Emily descended to the basement once more. The air felt colder here, heavier. She scanned the room with her flashlight, and her blood ran cold when the beam settled on two small figures standing in the corner. "Max, Lily," she cried, rushing towards them. But as she got closer, she realized with horror that they weren't the children but eerily lifelike dolls, their eyes glassy and vacant. A sinister laugh echoed through the basement, and the door slammed shut behind her. Emily whirled around, her breath coming in short gasps. The house was playing a game, and she was the pawn. The laughter grew louder, more distorted, as if coming from the walls themselves. Emily felt a surge of panic. She had to get out, find help. But the door wouldn't budge. Then, the laughter stopped abruptly, and a new sound filled the basement, a child's whimper. Emily's flashlight beam darted around until it illuminated a small, hidden door in the wall. Trembling, she approached it. The whimpering was coming from behind the door. Could it be Max and Lily, or was it another of the house's cruel tricks? Emily opened the door slowly, revealing a narrow, dark passage. The whimpering grew louder, more desperate. Steeling herself, Emily stepped into the passage, the darkness engulfing her. As she navigated the tight space, the walls seemed to close in around her. The air was thick, suffocating. She could barely see, but she kept moving towards the sound of the whimpering. Finally, the passage opened into a small room. In the dim light, Emily could make out two small figures huddled in the corner. Relief washed over her as she recognized Max and Lily. But as she moved towards them, the room suddenly shifted, the floor tilting beneath her. Emily stumbled, and the children's figures distorted, their faces twisting into grotesque masks. Emily screamed as the room spun around her, the children's laughter mixing with the house's mocking echoes. She was trapped in the heart of the nightmare, and the house on Maple Street had no intention of letting her go. Chapter 4: The Unseen Observer. Emily struggled to maintain her balance as the room continued to spin. The laughter of the children echoed in her ears, morphing into a cacophony of whispers and cries. She realized with horror that the figures she had seen were not Max and Lily, but some twisted creation of the house. The room suddenly stopped spinning, and Emily fell to the floor, gasping for air. The whispers grew louder, as if the house itself was speaking to her, taunting her. She looked around, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, revealing the empty, oppressive room. Desperation clawed at her. She had to find the children, had to escape this nightmare. But the house seemed to have a will of its own, constantly shifting and changing, a maze designed to trap and disorient her. As she stumbled through the passageway back to the basement, she heard a faint sound, a soft, rhythmic tapping. Emily paused, listening. It was coming from behind one of the walls. A glimmer of hope surged through her. Could it be Max and Lily, trying to signal to her? She followed the sound, pressing her ear against the cold wall. The tapping continued, steady and urgent. Emily felt along the wall, searching for a way to reach the source. Her fingers found a small, almost imperceptible seam in the wall. With a push, the panel slid open, revealing a narrow staircase leading up into darkness. Emily hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to turn back. But the possibility of finding the children propelled her forward. Ascending the stairs, the tapping grew louder, more insistent. The staircase opened into a small attic room, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. And there, tied to chairs in the center of the room, were Max and Lily, their eyes wide with fear. "Emily!" Max cried as she rushed to them. "It's the house. It's alive." Emily quickly untied them, her hands shaking. "I know, I'm going to get you out of here," she said, trying to sound confident despite her fear. But as they made their way towards the staircase, the door slammed shut, plunging them into darkness. The bulb flickered and died, and the room was filled with the sound of something heavy dragging itself across the floor. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she clutched the children close. The sound grew louder, closer. She could feel the presence of something in the room with them, something unseen but malevolent. Then, a voice, low and distorted, filled the room. "You can't leave," it hissed. "You're part of the house now." Emily screamed, swinging her flashlight wildly. The beam caught a glimpse of something, a shadowy figure, its form shifting and changing, never fully revealing itself. She grabbed the children and pushed past the figure, her only thought to escape. They stumbled down the staircase, the house groaning and shuddering around them as if in anger. Reaching the basement, Emily looked for a way out. The house seemed to be alive, its smart system now an entity of malice, controlling every door, every window, trapping them inside. As they navigated the twisting corridors, the house seemed to mock them, doors opening and closing, lights flickering, the air filled with the sound of whispered threats and laughter. Emily knew they were running out of time. The house was closing in around them, its malevolent spirit seeking to consume them. They had to find a way out, had to escape the terror of the house on Maple Street. Chapter 5 The Heart of Darkness. Panic surged through Emily as the oppressive walls of the house seemed to close in around them. The air was thick with a sense of dread, and the darkness felt alive, as if it were a part of the house's malevolent consciousness. Emily, Max, and Lily clung to each other as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors. The smart home system was now a menacing force, lights flickering erratically and doors slamming shut just as they approached. The house was toying with them, a predator playing with its prey. In the living room, the TV flickered to life again, displaying static that slowly formed into an image of the house's blueprints. Emily squinted at the screen, a plan forming in her mind. "The control room," she whispered. "If we can get there, maybe we can shut the system down." The blueprint showed the control room hidden behind a bookshelf in the study. With a new sense of purpose, Emily led the children to the study. The house seemed to sense their intent, the atmosphere growing more oppressive, the air charged with a silent fury. They found the bookshelf and, after a moment of frantic searching, discovered the mechanism to open the hidden door. The bookshelf slid aside, revealing a small, dimly lit room filled with servers and monitors, the brain of the house. The room was eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Screens displayed camera feeds from all over the house, a digital eye that watched their every move. Emily approached the main console, her hands trembling. She wasn't sure what she was doing, but she started to pull plugs and wires, hoping to disable the system. As she worked, the house's anger was palpable. The walls shook, and a deep, guttural growl echoed through the corridors. The screens flickered, showing images of the children's terrified faces, mixed with distorted, nightmarish visions. Then, the console sparked and went dark. A moment of silence fell, and Emily dared to hope. But it was short-lived. The house roared in fury, the sound deafening, and the room began to shake violently. "Run!" Emily screamed, grabbing the children. They dashed out of the control room just as the bookshelf slammed shut behind them. The house was now a maelstrom of chaos. Lights flashed, objects flew through the air, and the structure itself seemed to warp and twist. The smart home system, though damaged, was not defeated. It was enraged, lashing out with even greater ferocity. They ran for the front door, but it was sealed shut, the security system a glowing red eye that refused them escape. Windows shattered around them, the shards hovering in the air before flying towards them like deadly missiles. Emily shielded the children with her body as they cowered in a corner. She could feel the house's presence around them, a suffocating darkness that sought to engulf them. In the midst of the chaos, a voice whispered in her ear, chilling her to the bone. "You can never leave," it hissed. Emily looked up, her eyes meeting the security camera. It was then she realized the horrifying truth: the house wasn't just a structure with a smart system gone rogue. It was something else, something ancient and evil, using the technology as a conduit for its malevolence. Trapped and desperate, Emily knew they had to find another way out, but the house on Maple Street had no intention of letting them go easily. It had awakened to their presence, and it was hungry for their fear. Chapter 6: The Descent into Madness. The house on Maple Street had become a living nightmare. Every corner seemed to hide unspeakable horrors, and the once impressive technology had turned into instruments of torment. Emily clutched Max and Lily tightly, her mind racing for a solution. In the chaos, a faint glimmer of hope emerged. Amidst the cacophony, Emily heard the faint sound of running water. She remembered seeing a floor plan of the house in the control room, which included a basement level with an old laundry room, and possibly a way out through a small window or old drainage system. Guiding the children, Emily moved stealthily toward the kitchen, avoiding the flying debris and shifting walls. The smart system seemed to anticipate their every move, manipulating the house's architecture to disorient and trap them. Reaching the kitchen, Emily found the entrance to the basement, a narrow door hidden behind a false cabinet. As they descended the creaking steps, the oppressive presence of the house followed, its fury manifesting in violent shudders and groans. The basement was a maze of shadows, the darkness almost tangible. The faint sound of running water was louder here, guiding them through the labyrinth of old furniture and boxes. The house's anger was palpable, a force that pushed against them, trying to drive them back. Finally, they reached the laundry room. It was a small, cramped space, cluttered with old appliances. The window was there, but it was high up and barred. Emily's heart sank. Escape seemed impossible, but then she noticed the old drainage grate on the floor. It was rusted and covered in cobwebs, but it might be their only chance. She pulled at the grate, her fingers slipping on the rust. With a mighty effort, she wrenched it open, revealing a dark tunnel below. "Listen to me," Emily said, turning to the children. "We're going to crawl through this. It should lead us outside. Stay close and keep moving, no matter what." Max and Lily nodded, their faces pale but determined. Emily went first, squeezing into the narrow tunnel. The sound of running water was stronger here, a sign that they were headed in the right direction. The tunnel was claustrophobic, the walls pressing in on them. They crawled through the darkness, the house above them groaning and rumbling, as if trying to collapse the tunnel and bury them alive. As they moved, Emily could hear the house whispering to her, its voice a sibilant hiss in the darkness. It spoke of despair and madness, trying to lure her into giving up. But Emily pushed the voice away, focusing on the faint light that was growing steadily brighter ahead. They emerged from the tunnel into the cold night air, gasping for breath. They were in the backyard of the house, the imposing structure towering over them like a malevolent giant. As they stumbled away from the house, Emily looked back. The windows glowed with an unnatural light, and she could feel the house watching them, its hatred a tangible force. They had escaped the physical confines of the house, but Emily knew their ordeal was far from over. The house on Maple Street had marked them, and its influence extended beyond its walls. They were not safe, not yet. As they ran into the night, the house loomed behind them, a dark sentinel that would haunt their dreams for a long time to come. Chapter 7: Shadows of the Past. Emily, Max, and Lily ran through the dark streets, their hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline. The house on Maple Street stood ominously behind them, its presence still looming large in their minds. They didn't stop until they reached the safety of a nearby park, the house no longer in sight but its terror still gripping their hearts. Exhausted, they collapsed onto a bench, the cold night air biting at their skin. Emily tried to make sense of the night's events. The house had been more than just a building, it was as if it had a consciousness, a malevolent spirit that had targeted them. "I need to understand why," Emily said, more to herself than the children. "There has to be a reason why the house did this." Max, his face pale in the moonlight, spoke up. "The old man," he said. "The one who used to live there." The other kids said he was a witch or something. Emily's mind raced. A witch? It sounded like a child's tale, but after what she had experienced, she couldn't dismiss it. She decided they needed to learn more about the house's history. They found an all-night diner and settled into a booth, the bright lights and normalcy of the place a stark contrast to the darkness they had escaped. Emily used her phone to search for information about the house and its previous owner. The story that unfolded was chilling. The house on Maple Street had been owned by a man named Jasper Holloway, a reclusive figure rumored to be involved in the occult. After his mysterious death, the house had remained vacant until it was renovated and integrated with the smart home system. But there was more. Locals spoke of strange occurrences, unexplained disappearances, and a sense of dread surrounding the property. It seemed that Jasper Holloway's spirit, or something he had unleashed, was still tied to the house. "This doesn't make any sense," Emily muttered. "How could a smart home system interact with a ghost?" Lily, her eyes wide with fear, whispered, "Maybe it didn't just interact. Maybe it became a part of it." The thought sent a shiver down Emily's spine. The technology of the house, intended to make life easier, had instead become a conduit for something ancient and evil. They knew they had to go back. The house had marked them, and they would never be free of its terror unless they confronted the source. Armed with this new knowledge, they returned to the house as dawn broke. The street was eerily quiet, the house appearing dormant, but Emily knew better. They entered cautiously, the house greeting them with a sinister silence. The smart system was still offline, but the air was thick with the presence of Jasper Holloway. As they moved through the house, Emily felt as if they were being watched, the walls whispering secrets in a language she couldn't understand. In Holloway's old study, they found a hidden compartment containing his journals. The writings were ramblings of dark rituals and a quest for immortality. It became clear that Holloway had bound his spirit to the house, and the smart system had given him a new, terrifying form. "We need to break the bond," Emily said, determination in her voice. "We have to set his spirit free." But as they prepared to perform a ritual found in the journals, the house stirred. Shadows crept along the walls, and a cold wind howled through the rooms. Jasper Holloway's spirit was aware of their plan, and it would not give up its hold on the world of the living without a fight. The final confrontation was at hand, and Emily knew that they were fighting not just for their lives, but for their very souls. Chapter 8: Breaking the Curse. The air in the house was charged with a palpable sense of dread as Emily, Max, and Lily prepared for the final confrontation. The house, once a beacon of modern technology, now loomed like a specter of ancient evil, its walls echoing with the whispers of Jasper Holloway's malevolent spirit. Following the instructions in Holloway's journals, Emily set up a makeshift altar in the center of the study. The ritual was their only hope to sever the bond between Holloway's spirit and the house. As they began, the house reacted violently. The walls shook, and an unholy roar filled the air. Shadows twisted into grotesque shapes, lunging at them as if to stop the ritual. But Emily pressed on, her voice steady as she recited the incantations. Max and Lily huddled together, their eyes wide with terror, as Emily continued the ritual. The air grew colder, the darkness deepening, as if the house itself was trying to swallow them whole. Then, with a final, piercing scream, the spirit of Jasper Holloway materialized before them. It was a ghastly sight, a distorted figure, its form flickering between that of a man and something far more sinister. "You cannot break the bond," Holloway's spirit hissed. "This house is mine." But Emily stood her ground. "Your time is over, Holloway. You don't belong in this world anymore." Gathering her courage, Emily completed the ritual, the words echoing through the house like a sacred decree. A blinding light filled the room, and Holloway's spirit let out a final, agonized wail before dissipating into the ether. The house shuddered, a final groan of resistance, and then fell silent. The oppressive presence that had haunted its halls was gone, replaced by a sense of peace that hadn't been felt in decades. Emily, Max, and Lily stood in the quiet, the dawn light beginning to filter through the windows. The house on Maple Street, once a symbol of terror, was now just a house. They left the house behind, walking out into the new day. The sun was rising, casting a warm glow over the world. They had survived the night, but they knew their lives would never be the same. As they walked away, Emily looked back at the house one last time. It stood silent and unassuming, its secrets buried once again. But she knew the truth of what had happened within its walls, and she knew she would carry that knowledge with her forever. The house on Maple Street was no longer a place of horror. The curse had been broken, the spirit set free. But the memories of that night would linger, a haunting reminder of the thin veil between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. Emily, Max, and Lily had faced their fears and emerged victorious, but they knew there were other mysteries out there, waiting in the shadows. For now, though, they were content to leave the darkness behind and step into the light of a new day. We hope you enjoyed the story of the Babysitter's terror. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel.